Still calling your congressman? Waiting on hold? Hoping someone took your message?
Thank you for calling.
There's a better way to do this. The MAHA Legislative Tracker lets you browse every MAHA bill. Pick the ones that matter to you and send a letter to your rep with a single click. Search federal, by state, or by the issues you care about most. Take 60 seconds and make it count. Your voice can make America healthy again at mahaaction.org.
There was a time when the news delivered truth,
It still seems like a dream.
when integrity was paramount,
I cannot contend that I have always been right or wise.
and trusted voices guided a nation.
How do you measure such an astonishing moment?
Today, the headlines are blurred, the signal lost in the noise of corporate agendas and paid narratives.
Vocal anti-vaxxer.
Deranged lies.
It is humiliating.
What happened to the truth? It hasn't disappeared. It's simply moved. The MAHA Report brings you unfiltered, independent journalism covering the issues of the Make America Healthy Again movement. Rediscover the facts and reclaim the truth. Subscribe now at themahareport.com.
Welcome to the MAHA Media Hub, and welcome to the MAHA Revolution. I'm Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action. For the last 50 years, we've had Dr. Anthony Fauci, a man who, and there's really no gentler way to say it, he essentially failed his way to the top. Think about it. Everything he was put in charge of, from allergies on down, actually got worse on his watch. But here's what I want you to understand. It was never just about Fauci. Fauci's the poster child. He's not the system. And the system was what we're really up against. It's a machine that was built piece by piece to help big corporations, big pharma, big ag, big food. You've heard it before. Maximize their profits. Fauci was the face of it, but the machine itself is still standing. It's still humming along. And it's a very, very hard thing to dismantle because it was designed to protect the people who built it. So let's start where MAHA starts, with one simple, powerful fact. 85% of chronic disease is preventable. We know that. 85%. I want you to really hear what that means because it's an interesting way to put it. It's preventable because, for the most part, we don't need to do anything heroic to prevent it. We just need to stop. We need to stop intentionally poisoning the American public. We need to stop paying scientists to study how to addict people to toxic foods that cause chronic disease, to engineer drugs that create chronic disease, to spray pesticides that cause chronic disease. The disease isn't some mystery we haven't cracked yet. Much of it is being manufactured on purpose and for profit. And once you see that, you can finally answer the question that should haunt every single one of us. How is it possible that America spends 3 times the money, 3 times, and gets the very worst health outcomes of any of the 30 industrialized nations? Study after study shows that. We're at the bottom. How is that really possible? Well, the answer is simple. There's an unpaid tax buried in that number. Call it the corruption tax. We're pouring more money into healthcare than any nation on earth, and we're not getting what we paid for. That difference, that gap between what a healthy, honest system would cost and what we're actually paying, that money doesn't just vanish. It goes straight to the large, corrupt corporations that have studied how to poison us, how to addict us, how to make us fat, how to make us sick, and then once we're sick, how to keep us sick. Not cure us. Because a cured patient stops paying, and a sick one pays forever. That's the corruption tax, and every American family has been paying it for decades, in dollars, but also in suffering. Now, how did they get away with it for so long? Culture. For 50 years, the message was, trust the experts. They convinced us, trust the experts on your food, on your medicine, on your children. But those experts in government agencies, in corporate America, on college campuses across the country, came to see their job as protecting the corporations they were essentially working for. The EPA didn't do its job. The USDA didn't do its job. HHS didn't do its job. And the science, the very thing that was supposed to guide us to better and better outcomes, and could have, it got captured. Because here's the truth. The reason that all this scientific so-called progress hasn't given us longer, healthier lives is that a lot of it isn't about science. It's science in the private interest instead of science in the public interest. It's science that's funded by the corporations, orchestrated by those corporations to reach the conclusions that those corporations need. And you can't build real science on a foundation of fake corporate science. Corruption is the enemy of innovation, of the marketplace of ideas, and in the end of improved health outcomes. Real capitalism, real competition, real innovation comes from people and companies that succeed by producing improved health outcomes. That's why this is a genuine battle, an existential battle. And I don't use that word lightly. This is a fight for the future of our children, which is, really a fight for the future of mankind. And it's exactly why dismantling this system is so hard. We need new science, real science, built from the ground up. So here's what I want you to remember. When you hear people say Bobby Kennedy isn't doing enough, or he's doing too much, or that he isn't doing it right, or that he isn't a real scientist, or you read one more of the dozens and dozens of weekly hit pieces calling him dangerous, ask yourself, who's actually saying this? Who's talking? Because that is the system fighting back. Those are the corporations. Those are the people from the captured agencies, the ones defending their prior actions or their profit margins, the people terrified by what happens when the truth comes out. This isn't about honest criticism. It's about a machine that is set up to protect itself and the corporate profits that result from this system. But here's the good news, and it's the whole reason we can have this conversation with our heads held high right now. And that's, for the first time in 50 years, we have people in positions of real power who actually want to solve this problem. And that's the first step. That's everything. Because a government's job is to protect people, or at least get out of the way, and clearly not to protect the companies that are harming us. So this is finally starting to happen. We're in the middle of it, and it's a revolution. Many of our guests today are part of that revolution. They're in the front lines, dismantling the corruption, producing real science in the interest of the American people. They're the leaders in public health. They're the advocates, the incredible allies in the MAHA movement, all of us. So you'll hear from Dr. Mehmet Oz, Calley Means, Riley Gaines, Zach Lane, Russell Brand, Dr. Eric Berg, and Jax Bari, the MAHA Kid. But first, we're joined by Admiral Brian Christine, and he's the Assistant Secretary for Health at HHS, and he also leads the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps. He's focused primarily on public health priorities, including chronic disease prevention, and improving the overall health of Americans. Welcome, Admiral Christine.
Tony, thank you for having me on. Really appreciate that. And listen, everything you're saying is so true. When you talk about corporate interest and when you talk about greed, it's absolutely true. And we have seen an example of that with the report that we released last week from HHS entitled Wolves in White Coats. And what that's looking at was the financial incentives, the greed that led so-called gender-affirming clinics to perform sex-rejecting procedures using castrating chemicals and mutilating surgeries on minors with gender dysphoria. Again, we show in our report how there was truly a financial incentive to lead these vulnerable children down a pathway of these sex-rejecting procedures. So you're right. We see these corporate interests. We see the greed. We see the harm that it does to the overall health of our country. And this is an example of where greed can lead in terms of harming these vulnerable children. So thanks for having me on today.
Thanks so much. It's so clear that phraseology, that wolves in white clothing, that these are children that we should be protecting, that taxpayers are giving their money to the government to protect, not to mutilate them, not to allow them to be mutilated. So, that's part of the reason why this is such an important time. This is such a revolutionary time that we're unraveling all of this corruption, all of this, really this evil that's taken over Washington, that's taken over our government and our country. And clearly we can do better. And I'm just grateful that you're here, that the other people on this show are in positions of power, and that you're all really fighting back and trying to take our country back for all of us.
Exactly, Tony. And we show in our report that between 2019 and 2023, $120 million was billed and collected by these gender dysphoria for minors clinics. Over 225 of these clinics popped up around the country. You have these children, these minors who have gender dysphoria, which is a real condition. It's a psychological condition. And these children are best treated by comprehensive, compassionate mental health care that doesn't simply affirm their pathology. No, it helps to have them understand the trauma and the pain and the mental anguish and help them work through that so they come out the other side happy in their own skins. But you don't make the money on that, Tony. You make the money by doing these mutilating surgeries or putting these poor children on cross-sex hormones or puberty blockers. So I'm incredibly happy that Secretary Kennedy has made a referral to our Office of the Inspector General here at HHS, that Vice President Vance has made a referral to the Department of Justice under our new Attorney General, Todd Blanche. I'm so happy that these two men, the Vice President and Secretary Kennedy, along with myself, of course, are moving forward to protect these children, to expose the root, the evil that is simply trying to get money for taking these kids down the wrong pathway. And unfortunately, we see it, but I think this report is incredibly important, Tony, and I'm really happy that you allowed me to come on and speak about that today.
Thanks so much. Oops. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for all the work you've been doing.
Absolutely. And thank you. God bless you. And thanks for all the good things you're doing. And MAHA, let's move forward.
Definitely. Next up, we have Zach Lane, and he's a sixth-generation Iowan. He's a farmer, an educator, a businessman, and he's the Republican candidate for the for governor of Iowa. And his policies focus on helping families and farmers and protecting them from corporate corruption, corporate control. So MAHA Action endorsed Zach in December, and he's just the poster child for MAHA. He's hoping, and we really hope, that he makes Iowa a blueprint for the rest of the country. And so he's just such a good man, such a fighter. He really wants to improve the health of all the children, not only in his state, but to show other states how they should be doing it. So welcome, Zach. Great to have you on. Zach, we can't hear you.
There we go. Hey, thanks for having me on, Tony, and thanks to all the MAHA folks who have been supporting me since the beginning. It's been an honor to be in this fight. I'll tell you, I just about to go to the Iowa State Fair, and while I try to be MAHA as much as I can, you get an exception and exemption when you go to the State Fair in Iowa. So we have to be reasonable here on some of our movement. And so, yeah, I'll just tell you guys, I had a really great event actually yesterday. Bobby Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was out to Iowa, and we actually got to go fishing for a little bit. So that was a pretty big moment. And he did catch more fish than me. I will just admit that right now. But I'll tell you, we're seeing across the country, especially in our state, that people are understanding the power of the MAHA movement. I really see it. We're hearing about it. Even some of the people on the other side are ramping up their attacks against the whole movement and agenda. And what people really don't realize, I think, is that this has been a movement since before it had a name. and before it had people that were giving it the power that it's been given nationally. And we're very thankful to those people. Many of them are on this call right now, and some of a lot of them are speakers. But in Iowa, we're trying to lead on is to be a state that is helping to make sure we have healthier kids, that we have healthy food in our schools. I actually had an opportunity to meet with Secretary Brooke Rollins just a couple weeks ago about changing a few regulations in the USDA to allow more food grown in the state of Iowa to be served in our public schools. My goal as governor is to get to a point where we have 80% of the food served in our public schools comes directly from the state of Iowa. Right now we have very, very little, actually very little. We have the best farmland in the world in Iowa, and we import 95% of our food. And so we should flip that on its head. We really should be leading Iowa. I would like Iowa to be the real food capital of the country. And it starts with large levers that we can pull. And I hope other states will do this as well. I know that some other states are even leading on this, but we should start in our public schools to help those kids get good, healthy, nutrient-dense foods that help with focus, that helps with reducing chronic diseases. It helps with reducing autoimmune conditions. And so I think we can do that as a state. I want Iowa to lead on that, create that blueprint for us as a country. I also think there's a lot of discussion around different issues that are coming up in each state. And that is, we look at these data centers popping up all over the place, and many states are giving them, tremendous tax incentives and tax breaks. I'm actually calling to end all of those tax incentives and breaks, and I'd like to actually repurpose those to start incentive programs for Iowa's family farms to start treating them as entrepreneurial activities and start helping them to transition to other types of agriculture, and start with grass-fed beef or things like that would help more diversify their operations, help them make more money, serve their communities better, and also have an option to find new markets. And so we can do that on our farm right now. We're growing corn, soybeans, oats, alfalfa, and we just started growing einkorn because my wife likes to make sourdough bread and pasta and pancakes. And I'll tell you, just from posting a couple videos online, the amount of people looking for these products that are, not using any inputs whatsoever, it's tremendous. We have a lot of people out there looking for this, and we have the best soil in the country. And I want Iowa to lead on providing this diversification and these alternatives for those farmers that would like to make the switch. And I think there's a lot out there that are looking for it right now. I think that this all goes into the whole goal of making the next generation far more healthy than the generations that have come before, and that we can lead in helping to reduce this chronic disease burden that we're seeing across the country and in our state. And I'm just very thankful for the entire MAHA movement, all you guys have done. And I would just say my last thing is we just have to stick to our guns here. We have to advocate for what we know is true and what we believe in. And don't let up an inch, because we know that the fight is far too important, that what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing for the future of our kids is going to have generational impact. And we're the ones on the ground. And I think that with that, we can see a time in our country where far more people are living long, healthy, prosperous lives, and our rural communities are thriving. So with that, again, thank you all. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the trail. If you're here in Iowa, come to the Iowa State Fair, and would love to have you all supporting the campaign and helping us win here in Iowa and make a blueprint for the nation on how we can, really prioritize the next generation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Zach. And, let me start off by saying whatever you eat at the state fair stays at the state's fair. It's not our business. We can't comment on it. But, if we can all be full on MAHA 80% of the time, 90% of the time, that's a big victory. That's got to be good enough. But, it is, a great thing to think about 80% of the food in your state being local. I mean, that's a great state goal. It's a great state goal for every state in the country. Food is the front line. It's the threshold thing, and it's the easy thing, eating healthy food. So everyone watching this should post about Zach. They should, back Zach in every way they can. They should vote for him if they can, if they're in the great state of Iowa, because Zach, you will be the first true MAHA governor, and we need you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Next up, we have Dr. Mehmet Oz, and he's the administrator of CMS, and he oversees health coverage for, get this, 160 million Americans. And he's been working incredibly hard to shift the focus from treatment to prevention and from drugs to nutrition, and to make it mostly easier and more affordable to be healthy. And one of the ways you can do that is by saving hundreds of millions of dollars by fighting fraud and eliminating coverage for sex-rejecting procedures for minors. So thank you, Dr. Oz. Thanks for coming on yet again.
We're more than welcome, Tony. I want to actually pivot a little bit and talk about some really good news that just came in about drug prices, which are the most feared part of the healthcare bill because people have to pay out of pocket for so much of it. In fact, when you go to a drugstore, there's about a 1 in 3 chance if you're getting a prescription medication that's a branded product that you're going to walk away empty-handed because you can't afford it. And so we began negotiating aggressively about a year ago for what's called most favored nation pricing, which, as the name might indicate, is that we are no longer going to tolerate global freeloading. We're going to insist that whatever price drug companies use to sell overseas should be the same price here. We're not price fixing. You pick the price if you're a pharmaceutical executive, but whatever you're going to charge the German people or the English people, you need to charge the American people. In fact, the crazy thing is that our most impoverished Americans often have to pay drug prices that are higher than folks who are affluent in other countries. President said, no mas, not going to do that anymore. And the medication prices that we were able to negotiate, including things like the GLP-1 fat shot, as the president calls it, are dramatically cheaper than they were a year ago. In fact, if you're over the age of 65 and you qualify, it's only $50 a month to get these medications. They used to be $1,200 a month. Now, what has that actually done to drug prices? Well, we just got the data back, and the consumer price index is down for the last 6 months over 6%. Drug prices dropped 6% in the last 6 months. They're down over 3% for the last year. That, my friends, is the largest drop in drug prices in 63 years. Now, I want to go back and try to examine what was going on 63 years ago, because Bobby's uncle was president back then. And many of you who are old enough will remember thalidomide. Thalidomide was this medication that was ostensibly given to help with things like morning sickness, but it turned out to be responsible for birth defects. It was never allowed widely in this country, but overseas caused lots of problems. And there was so much political pressure when this medication was seen to be dangerous that the FDA was allowed, listen carefully, for the first time to insist that medications not only be safe, but they had to be effective. Now, that might seem like a bizarre thing to insist that a pharmaceutical company would have to do, but prior to 1963, it wasn't that evident that you actually had to show your medication worked. By the way, you could advertise and make claims that were false, and all that got cleaned up in 63, and that led to a dramatic drug price reduction over the next year. And so similarly, the big things we've done today are seismic in nature, reshuffle the deck, insist that there's parity and fairness in the way these services are now being offered. And that is going to allow us to I think, harvest some of these savings. Now, the National Economic Council has estimated that we're going to save about $600 billion over the next 10 years because of these negotiated drug prices. And so it's not just we're going to enjoy a drop in prices this year, but we should see a sustained reduction in how fast prices were increasing across the board in the medication space. And it's one of several places we're going to have to play a role in government to try to drive prices back towards a reasonable level. The drug prices are a good example, but medication prices and medical prices in general should increase at the rate of the gross national product increases. You know, we should be growing our country and then paying more in order to keep our people healthy. It shouldn't be that we have to spend twice as much on healthcare coverage than our people can make in their salaries. That's not sustainable. And so I'm very happy about this new development. That combined with aggressive approaches towards some of the fraud, waste, and abuse that we've been witnessing together are going to be able to save this country a lot of money. We estimate about $100 billion a year on the fraud side alone. And I highlight that because we're still suffering in America with a lot of people getting taken advantage of, many times by foreign multinational groups who are willing to steal from the most vulnerable. I mean, who steals from the poor? It's bizarre that we would have come to this place, but the corruption that results when you allow people to defraud our most vulnerable is difficult to harness. You can't put a noose around that and pull it away. You got to actually stomp it out. And that's what we've been forced to do, taking very aggressive action with national moratoriums on the ability of new companies to enter some of these businesses. We just have too much fraud happening. And under Secretary Kennedy and President Trump, we've been able to aggressively address some of these things through the anti-fraud task force. So across the board, we're in a pretty good place. Very optimistic that we're beginning to get our arms around some of the affordability issues in healthcare. And all that combined with a MAHA movement that gets people healthy enough that they don't require expensive care as much is a good 1-2 punch to bring affordability back into the mainstream. Thanks. Back to you, Tony.
Thank you so much. And drug prices need to go down. They need to keep going down. And, big pharma can't fleece Americans and pass the savings on to people all around the world. We need to get the very best prices, the best deals. And, the largest drop in 60 years, people should kind of sit with that for a second. I mean, this never happens. Medical prices never go down. Year after year, everything's going up. So that is just epic. And, if prices keep going down, people then have more time. People have more leisure to go outside, to work out, to cook healthy food, to become healthier. So this is such an important part of all of that. And, so let me just say that this is incredible progress, and that you're fighting fraud, fighting corruption, fighting for American families and for children. That is just so important. And this is the time that there's never been an administration like this. So I'm just so grateful. And I know that the American people, once they understand what's going on, everyone, every single person, either party will be grateful. So thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Next up, we have Russell Brand, and he's been wrongly accused. He's been vilified, persecuted, deplatformed, demonized, censored, prosecuted. But, he always stands by his convictions. And, he has really strong beliefs, really strong values. And he's had such an incredible transformation in his own life. The same kind of transformation that MAHA wants everybody to have, that we want everybody to be able to, whether it's physically or spiritually or in any other way, really make progress, really make a transformation to a healthier existence. So I just want to say that we stand with Russell Brand. So he's the author of an incredible new book. It's called How to Become a Christian in 7 Days. It's currently being censored in the UK and in all kinds of other ways. So if you want to buy that book, this is the book the government doesn't want you to read. Please find a place that you can get it, read it. Russell is a genius. You will hear it in the next 5 minutes. He just has a passion and a way of expressing himself that I've never seen before in my life. Welcome, Russell.
Tony, thank you so much for that warm and beautiful introduction. It was lovely to see you there with Dr. Oz, and I think he's performing a very rare feat of being in a position of high office and maintaining not only dignity, but his incredible looks. Didn't he look remarkably handsome there, Dr. Oz? Every inch the doctor that America fell in love with. TV's most handsome doctor. But Dr. Drew, pretty good looking. Dr. Phil, not bad. Eric Berg, we got Eric Berg now. There's some hunky doctors out there. But when it comes to female beauty, both of an internal spiritual, but also of a rather more superficial nature, we need look no further than Liana Werner-Gray, who joins me, your MAHA friend, who's just been on my show.
Oh, hello, everyone. Surprise. Just had a fantastic time reporting with Russell for his show today.
It went very well, I thought.
Awesome. People came for healing.
Yes, and what I really enjoyed about what Liana's offering, Tony, and I remember this as being something that's fundamental, pivotal, even essential to the MAHA movement, is what is the spiritual crisis that would lead the world's most powerful and glorious nation to create institutions that are poisoning people through their food, that are making people sicker through their medicines. And we kind of touched a little bit on that, didn't we, Liana? The sort of spiritual essence of it. Can you tell a little bit to our beloved friend Tony so that he gets the benefit, even though, he's getting better by the second. Isn't he become a great host, Tony, now?
Tony, you are amazing. We gave you a shout out on the show today, too. So we were talking about the enemy and how the enemy is contaminating everything, our food, our water, our air, even our clothing, and just how we can armor up. And I've talked about this on MAHA before, about how we can detox every single day. Drink bentonite clay because parasites hate it and it absorbs heavy metals. Drink chlorophyll every day. But the spiritual aspect, too, what what I find in my teaching is what's missing is the Holy Spirit. And when people give their life to Jesus, the Holy Spirit comes in to live in their body. And that's the same Spirit that rose Jesus from the dead after 3 days. And it's the same Spirit that lives in us that heals us. And it really is a missing link to so many people who are seeking healing. So having God be our healer, and then also taking the things that God created for us during this time, we can heal and thrive no matter how contaminated the enemy is trying to destroy us. And I'm also over here just trying to feed Russell some beef sticks and some chlorophyll water as well. So we're hitting it from all angles, spiritual and...
It's perfectly okay for Liana to offer me a meat stick, but if we tried it the other way around, I would probably add that to my court case in October. I noticed, my friend, that Secretary Kennedy has restored the presidential fitness test, and it's good to see that Secretary Kennedy is making moves that have a demonstrable impact on health. I was also heartened, and like I know a lot of you on this call know more about this than I do, about the billions of dollars being dedicated to addiction. Now, like I know that addiction in particular is that aspect of illness. And I know where you've really helped educate me, Liana, is help me to understand that all forms of sickness have a spiritual component by nature.
Yeah, all sickness, disease comes from the enemy. It does not come from God. And we should hate it.
Well, do you know what's interesting about that is because I was about to say that like addiction is by its nature a spiritual disease, and it has at its core selfishness. Like before you become an addict, you are selfish. Some people don't like to hear that, but it means that you literally are kind of worshiping yourself, even if you simultaneously hate yourself. So
the
what
spirit of rejection too can lead to addiction.
How do you
Spirit
mean?
of rejection usually comes in when we go through something hard in our life, when in childhood, some kind of trauma, we feel rejection. The spirit of rejection comes from the enemy, and that leads to majority of addiction that I've found in my clients working with people. They have the spirit of rejection there. So we work with that on a spiritual level to get that out. Then the addiction goes away.
Well, I'll tell you one person who we cannot allow to even for a second feel the spirit of rejection. That is one of the administration's great victories, the glorious, the never less than beautiful, a man that I take great pleasure from introducing. Once I did an event in DC, Liana, and I gave Calley Means an introduction. He said, I don't want to talk anymore because I bigged him up to a ridiculous degree. But one does wonder what's going on in the Means household. How many Means children are there? We've had Calley, we've had Casey. Are there going to be like a Jackson 5 of Means children? And which one is Michael, for good or for real? I'm going to hand back to our beloved patron, friend, and publisher, the incomparable, eloquent, and handsome, looks like a hero from a Western like Tombstone, could be a kind of Kurt Russell, Doc Holliday anti-hero. Thank you, Tony, for the support and love that you give us. Both of us are very devoted to you.
Yes, thank you, Tony. We love you so much.
Love both of you guys too. And, let me just say that anything that helps you heal, anything that helps you, become more fit, whether it's healthy food or, really anything, fighting addiction, practicing your faith, like you've both said, giving up your selfishness, opening up your heart to others and your brain to kind of new ideas and new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things, new ways of eating, new ways of living generally, is in the spirit of MAHA, because all of those things make you healthy. It's not just the things you put in your body. It's the way that you actually live your life every day and the way that you treat other people. And, also the way that you treat your own body and your own life. So, there's so much progress we can make. And I see it happening when I look into your faces, your happy, healthy faces. And it just makes me so grateful that we have this MAHA family that is working to roll back 50 years of greed and corruption and poisoning of the American public and opening up everything to a new way of living. Thank you, guys.
Amen.
Amen.
Well said. Preach, Tony.
Next up, we have one of the many Means people. We have Calley, and he's a senior advisor to Secretary Kennedy and to President Trump on all things MAHA. He's the co-author of the runaway multi-million copy New York Times bestseller, Good Energy, with his incredible, accomplished sister, Calley Means. And he's been working to address the root cause of disease, focusing on healthy food, exercise, sleep, stress management as ways to heal. And he's been at the center of all the big MAHA battles, whether on the front lines or behind the scenes over the last 2 years. He's been fighting right alongside Secretary Kennedy, literally day and night. So thank you, Calley. Great to have you on. Hey, Calley, we can't hear you yet.
Hey, Tony. Just saying, you got to stop putting me after Russell. It's a tough act to follow. But I was just thinking back.
Nobody can win.
When this whole movement was starting a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go out to Wales, and Russell in rural Wales had this incredible event he threw every year, and it was thousands and thousands of people. A lot of them in recovery. The entire focus of the event was wellness. There were talks on spirituality, talks on healthy eating, talks on medical freedom. And almost every person I met, Russell had helped personally. He has a hotline that they can call for help for people in need. It was one of the most inspiring things I've ever seen. So Russell, love you, man. And thank you for putting all this great energy in the world. Back then, a couple of years ago, I don't think we could have imagined where we'd be today. And, as we always talk about, this is existential things we're fighting for. And Bobby Kennedy is up against huge forces. I'll tell you, having the opportunity to see Bobby Kennedy on the inside every day, he is my hero. I have 2 kids, to answer your question, Russell. And I think what Bobby Kennedy is demonstrating are the attributes I pray that my kids have when they grow up. He is fearless. He's some of the mission. I mean, he's carrying this forward through his own sheer force of will and moral authority because he's right. And he obviously is going up against a ton of forces. There's trillions of dollars still that are dependent on Americans being sick. And that's felt every day. Recently, we had an event at HHS where we celebrated wins on the food issue in particular. And I really think it's worth repeating what we've done in the past 18 months. Before we came in 18 months ago, soda was the top item on food stamps. And Bobby asked me and others to come up with a list of, the most ambitious policies we could do on food. And we suggested that. And everyone told us we were crazy. This is the top priority of the food industry, right? The soda industry alone is getting $15 billion a year from the federal treasury to subsidize soda for lower income kids to get them addicted. I mean, what an incredible thing that they're getting. This is a material part of soda companies' revenue on public earnings reports. There's no way this is going to happen. Just 18 months later, we have 30 states, the majority of states in the country, that have independently, through Bobby's leadership, said that soda and candy is no longer going to be on SNAP. And the USDA, for the first time, has approved those waivers. People told us there was zero way we would be able to, in the dietary guidelines, say don't eat ultra-processed food, don't eat refined carbohydrates, don't eat, really limit added sugar. These things are important and obvious public health messages, but the reason these obvious points haven't been in U.S. dietary guidance is because the U.S. government spends hundreds of billions of dollars on food a year. And when you put those messages in the dietary guidelines, that flows to hundreds of billions of dollars of food. That's a big, big deal. This is one of the biggest procurement areas in the U.S. government. So people said there was no way we were going to do that. And through Bobby's will, through the coalition he put together, we were able to talk to the food industry who came in, and they made a very direct argument. They said, if you recommend against sugar, if you recommend against refined carbohydrates, if you recommend against highly processed food, it's going to hurt our sales. And we're going to sell less soda. And I could tell that argument carried water until the Trump administration. And what I felt when we're working through this policy is we had air cover from President Trump and Secretary Kennedy to do the right thing. Because what Bobby Kennedy has shown is doing the right thing is also the right politics. Because he's shown that we now have an army of people behind us who are voting and caring about this issue, that are part of the coalition that brought President Trump to power. And now we can unabashedly do the right thing. And we were able to have dietary guidelines that had zero industry influence whatsoever. And that's now showing fruit. I mean, we just went to a military base. They are revamping the military food services in bases across the country, ripping out the processed food, service, and they're cooking fresh salmon, they're cooking steak, they're cooking, beautiful handmade salads. And actually, it's not even a budget increase. They're able to do this for the same amount they were spending on ultra processed food. We talked about the grass regulation and released that. Let's be very clear. This is the most significant food regulation. It's a regulation in the past 30 years. And some of our conservative friends, I'm a conservative, said, wait, we're not regulatory. Well, we don't see this as a new regulation. We see this as fixing the perversion, the corporate capture of a previous regulation that has created a system where 95% of food ingredients have zero oversight and the FDA doesn't even know about them. This isn't over-regulatory or under-regulatory. The intention of our food safety processes is the FDA has a list of what's in our food and is able to ask for safety information and conduct safety reviews. We do not have that standing here today. But now we did this common sense, no-brainer thing where when there is a new ingredient in our food supply, the FDA is going to know about it and they're going to be able to look into the safety of it. And for the 10,000 ingredients that are in our food that are banned in every other country in the developed world, the FDA is now going to be able to have a list of those ingredients and conduct safety studies of whether these ingredients that are banned in other countries are safe in our children's food supply. It started with the food dyes that are in 60% of children's food in the United States. 60% of children's food have food dyes. These are banned in every other country. They're clearly neurotoxic. They're made of crude oil. We were under a regime where we were told, no, trust us, those are safe. We're not going to show you any safety studies. That's changing. That's a big deal. There's so much work left to do, but that's just one example on the food issue. We've done things that several years ago were thought impossible. The Democrats are absolutely losing their minds. They're having a mental breakdown. They haven't been helping us at all. They've been obstructing everything. And frankly, I think it's very clear, who is imperfectly, and it's obviously imperfect. I mean, we've got major stakes here, but what side is fighting hard for these issues, I think is clear. Thank you.
Thanks, Calley. And, what you said about Bobby is just so important that, that he's got a level of honesty and integrity and moral courage that we just haven't seen in a generation in this country. And he's relentless. And these big companies, these soda companies, the candy companies, the ultra processed food companies, they don't want to be knocked off government programs. They don't want to be taken off, off the SNAP program. They don't want grass to be limited or changed. They want to just keep right on going and poisoning the American public. And they're willing to fight dirty. They're willing to do whatever they can. And they can censor people. They can deplatform people. They can vilify people. They can get them fired. And they've done that for years. But that's finally stopping now. It's finally, we're at a period where things are possible in a way that they just haven't been for such a long time. And you and Bobby and President Trump are just having major wins day after day, and you're not backing down, and our food supply is getting better, and people are reading labels, and children are getting, better food, fewer drugs, fewer vaccines even now. So, so much incredible progress being made, and it's because of the hard work of you, Bobby, the president, and Dr. Oz and a handful of others, and all of the influencers on this show who are posting stuff day and night because they really believe in the MAHA mission. So thank you so much, Calley.
Thank you, Tony. And the influencers are the most important. This country is waking up and the markets are changing. And Bobby and I believe that what's happening in the culture is even more important than what's happening in DC. We got to keep it up. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Eric Berg, and he's, widely known as the knowledge doc. And he's, earned that title by becoming just a globally recognized health teacher and, just somebody who kind of walks 45 million followers across all his platforms through ways that they can lead healthier lives. So, when you think about the culture, like Calley said, that culture changes by people getting better information, by people learning about innovation, by all of us kind of fighting back against the lies, against the poisoning, against the corruption, against the greed. And they do that with the kind of common sense information that Dr. Berg is willing and able to disseminate to people, where they learn how their body works and how they can, use practical strategies to become healthier. So he's just an incredible thinker, writer, researcher. And, he's been one of the key MAHA voices. And he's got this groundbreaking book now, this incredible book, which I think is going to become just a real Bible to a lot of people. And it's called Change Your Environments, because our current environment, the environment that all of us live in our cars, in our homes, all through our day, all through our lives, it's toxic, and we need to fix that. And Dr. Berg is helping us do that. So thank you, Dr. Berg, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Tony. I really appreciate it, because today I want to talk about one of the chapters in this book, which has to do with chemicals, and that piggybacks on what Calley said, but with grass, or you can call it gross, whatever you want to call it. But there's this. So for those of you that don't know what this is, it's a massive loophole. It's been going on since 1958. And it stands for generally recognized as safe. Okay. So this was initially created for just for household ingredients like salt and vinegar. Of course, over time, corporate capture came in and the system changed completely. So now companies on their own accord can say that their own synthetic chemicals are safe with no independent review and no real testing for long-term hormone damage. So that's why I'm so excited about what RFK is doing now, because to be able to test these chemicals to really show people they're probably not safe. And I'm going to explain something very specifically why I say that, because you're talking about 10,000 chemicals that are in our food supply, packaging, everyday products. And, they maybe they're going to check to see if they're going to create some poisoning immediately, but they definitely, from my knowledge, looking at this, they're not looking at the mess that a child's endocrine system, it's going to end up being a problem the next 20 years, like long-term safety studies. So very few people really understand also why these chemicals mess with our hormones. So that's what I want to just mention. It's very, very simple. But here's the thing you need to know. Like estrogen is a very specific chemical shape. Estrogen is like one of the oldest hormones, and it's a very simple shape. It's like a little ring. It's called a phenol ring. That's the shape of estrogen. Think about like a key that just fits right into the estrogen receptor lock. So here's the problem. That exact same phenol structure, that's little ring, happens to be also the cheapest, most common building block in modern industrial chemicals. So this is why, like BPA in plastic, phenol ring, preservatives in cosmetics, phenol ring, synthetic fragrances, pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, other types of plastics, all are built on this phenol ring. So basically, this is why they call them xenoestrogens, because they can mimic estrogen. That's what's happening right now. So we have this huge toxic estrogen soup that we're swimming in, especially children as well. And this has been going on for quite some time, but it's actually getting worse and worse and worse. So the body doesn't know the difference between the natural and the chemical coding thermal grocery receipts that fits right into that lock. So it turns it on like a switch. So these foreign estrogens accumulate in the body fat. And so when we see girls going through their puberty a lot earlier than before, you know what's happening. But even like boys, very young in the developmental stages are showing all sorts of disruption in hormones, unfortunately. So across our population, the sperm counts are down by like 50%. Testosterone has crashing in many people around the country and around the world. So estrogen dominance is behind that. The tiny daily exposures accumulate in the fat, and then they mess with your hormones. And this is why the MAHA movement is so important in asking these questions that we should have asked decades ago. Like, why are these compounds in our body? Where are they coming from? Why are we allowing this loophole? And why would anyone fight just to have safety studies for these chemicals? So we owe it to our children for a clean environment and test their hormones actually like they matter, because they do matter. Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you, Dr. Berg. And, I just want to say, and, that I really want people to buy this book and, change your environments. And because I believe that buying this book, reading this book, thinking about the things in this book is going to make it possible, going to make it more likely that you can lead a healthier and happier life. And, yes, it's a product. It's going to cost you some money, but it's going to be money really well spent. And people have often said when they try to attack Bobby or they try to attack me or Dr. Berg or somebody else, they say, people are trying to make money, that we're trying to sort of profit off it in some way. And the idea is, first of all, that's just not true. But the second part of it is that it's okay to make money, that there's nothing wrong with capitalism. There's nothing wrong with profiting by bringing good information to people, by doing something good in the world. What's bad is to profit off poisoning people, off harming people, off lying to people, off acting in corrupt ways. That's the danger. The danger isn't, real competition in the marketplace of ideas. It's not books or products that people sell and, yes, make money on, but products that really help you have a better life. So, I really continue to think that that's an important point, that this is an important book. You should buy this book, even if somebody's going to ask you to spend money on it, and even if somebody's going to make money on it. That's not the problem. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Berg. Always great to have you on.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Riley Gaines. And as you know, she's a former NCAA all-star swimmer at U of Kentucky. And she's become a nationally recognized advocate for women's sports after competing against a transgender athlete at the 2022 NCAA championships. And she detailed her experience of this and kind of embraced common sense in the face of being smeared as transphobic and evil. And she told this story in her best-selling book, Swimming Against the Current, such an important book. And then through her podcast and through all of the media that she's gotten, she's just used it to make the world better, to make the world understand. And so she's really champions MAHA's mission of confronting chronic disease, reforming dietary guidelines, reducing the influence of big pharma and big food on our health. So really just a MAHA human being. Thank you, Riley, and great to have you on. Riley, we can't hear you yet.
Let's see. How about now? I may be like the most Gen Z on here, but even still, I am technologically inept. Look, it's really good to be on with you guys. I will say, after listening to both Calley and Dr. Berg, I feel quite unqualified after listening to the phenol structure and different things. So I just want to approach today, even studying chemistry in college and getting my degree in that, I just want to approach today as someone who has personal experience and the things that I have found beneficial to me as a woman as it pertains to health and fitness and wellness in every stage of life. Now, especially, I think, as a mom. So prior to conception, throughout my pregnancy, and then postpartum. And I want to spend just a brief second in talking about the newborn vaccine schedule that we have seen, as I said, now having a 10-month-old baby girl, and just how grateful I am for the administration and the action that they have taken to reduce some of I guess the better way to say it is to put rights back into with parents. So very excited about that. As I said, I've always loved fitness. I come from a family of athletes. And so my dad, he was an SEC football player, went on to play professionally in the NFL. All of my uncles played and won Super Bowls. My mom was a Division I softball player. So I grew up in an athletic family. So sports were kind of ingrained in me. It became part of like our family culture. We learned discipline and competition and hard work and the importance of taking care of your body. And those lessons that I learned when I was younger have stayed with me throughout the entirety of my life. Once I went off to University of Kentucky, as you alluded to, be a swimmer. That's where I did some things I'll forever be proud of. I'm a 12-time NCAA All-American. I'm a 5-time SEC champion, actually the SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time. 2-time Olympic trial qualifier. The list goes on. All of that, I guess, just to reiterate the point, it's a lifelong journey to compete at and ultimately be successful at the highest level. And when you are competing at that level, you learn that your body isn't something that you just look at in the mirror. It's something that you use. You have to train it. You have to challenge it. You have to push it. You have to ask it to do things that are incredibly difficult. And I have found that you really learn what you're capable of when you are willing to do that work. And that's one of the reasons that I feel so strongly about fitness. I think, as I said, especially in women today, I think our society, specifically the way that fitness is framed in Hollywood and through celebrities and through elites, they've kind of reduced fitness for women down to aesthetics, right? They talk about weight and what size are your clothes and your waistline and your thigh gap and whether someone looks thin enough and the number on the scale. I think that women deserve a much better understanding of what fitness actually is. And so I just want to encourage everyone, but again, women especially, to lift heavy. Women should build muscle. Women should eat enough food to support the bodies that they're asking to perform. I believe women should prioritize protein. I think oftentimes women believe this lie that they're going to get bulky or they're going to look like a man if they lift heavy and eat protein. I'm here to tell you that's just simply not true. And this isn't about every woman needing to look and to feel and to perform like a professional athlete. It's about being strong and healthy and capable and functional and physically prepared for the different stages of life. I think that's important, especially in the midst of, again, the messages that young women are receiving, kind of in this skinny epidemic that we live in, whether I'm talking about eating disorders or the GLP epidemic. There's this like renewed obsession with extreme thinness in Hollywood, celebrity culture, social media. And I would say I'm not interested in diagnosing someone else's eating habits or looking at a photo and assuming that I know what's happening behind the scenes. But just to acknowledge the cultural message that's being sent to young women, I will say I don't choose to chase skinny. I choose to chase well-nourished. I choose to chase fertility, being fertile. I choose to chase being healthy and functional. And again, I say that now as a mom. I want my daughter to see someone who is strong, who is healthy, who is energetic, and who is capable. To that point, as I said, now bringing life into this world, our 10-month-old little baby girl, she's the light of our life. She's the joy of my world. There's nothing that I wouldn't do for her. I think with the conversations that we're seeing online surrounding pregnancy and postpartum, I think especially with the Lindsay Clancy trial that is going on, there's a lot of discussion around postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. And I think those are important conversations to be having. And I think women should know what resources exist for them. I'm not here to discount or discredit any of that. But again, I approach this conversation as a woman kind of seeing these stories online. I want to share my perspective in the other side of things where I had a fantastic experience. And I credit a lot of that to my fitness and the baseline level that I had going into, or I guess prior to conception, moving my body, lifting heavy, prioritizing fitness throughout pregnancy, and even postpartum. I had just the most amazing experience. Now approaching the conversation surrounding vaccines. I approached this, welcoming our daughter into this world, very unbiased. I wanted to do the research myself. I wanted to understand it myself. I read lots of different books. I listened to our administration and officials involved in this administration about what was the best thing to do. And what I found in this was that, based off the guidelines of my OBGYN and things that we had been told as women for many decades now, things like, oh, well, don't eat fish because it's high in mercury levels. Okay, but you want to give my daughter, moments after her arrival into this world, vaccines with copious amounts of mercury. Same thing with aluminum. We've made this big shift to get away, from deodorant with aluminum in it. Yet we want to give babies vaccines with 30 times the FDA recommended amount for adults to intake of aluminum. Something just really didn't sit right with me. And so I'm so grateful for the transparency that we have seen from this administration. And again, just how we've seen this administration put the rights back into the parents. Everything that's been done, whether it's the presidential fitness test being reinstated back in public education, to the recent executive orders that are signed. On behalf of my little daughter, I say thank you. And for having me on this call, incredibly enlightening and stuff that the general public certainly needs to hear.
Thanks, Riley. That was great. And you're such a champion and you're such a great role model and have so much to teach young people. So, and then clearly, let's just go through some of the things. Clearly nobody should be told what to do with their own bodies, with their own children. They shouldn't be forced to put things in their children's bodies that are potentially dangerous, life-changing, life-ruining, life-ending products in certain cases. So our government should be in the business of warning us of dangers, but then letting us decide for ourselves and for our children, and not protecting multi-billion-dollar corporations. That can't be the job of the government. So your help in really pointing that out, because people have to just yell that from the rooftops that we've had 50 years of the government working for the other guy, not for us. We're the ones who pay taxes. So, and then when it comes to food, probably the healthiest person who I know is a woman who eats only one thing. She eats steak twice a day, and she's incredibly fit. She's incredibly healthy. It doesn't mean that's good for you or good for me, but it certainly is good for her. And she takes a blood test every couple of months to make sure, and supplements to any kind of deficit. So, they're all different kinds of ways of doing things. But the answer can't be, really skinny people taking pills to get even skinnier. The only way that can happen, there's no way that that's healthy. There's no way that that's a good decision. And the only way that can happen is if people are brainwashed and they're lied to and they're indoctrinated. And so that's one of the things that we really have to fight. And that's what brainwashed people do. And we don't want anyone to have to suffer in those ways. We want people to lead, happy, healthier, energetic lives, to have the kind of energy that people like you have. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks so much.
Next up, we have Jax Bari, and he is 13 years old, and he's already just an incredible, notable activist. He's the co-founder of Celiac Journey, but he can be seen in the halls of Congress, meeting people, just telling everybody who will listen. So he's the true MAHA Kid, promoting common sense ways to solve the problems that he sees and the problems that he's been subjected to. And, his way is to require the labeling of gluten on all packaged foods in the U.S. And because of the work that he's done, Representative Luna, brought forth the bipartisan FASTER Act of 2026. And, that would amend the FDA's major food allergen labeling policies to include barley, rye, and oats right alongside wheat. So, Jax is just a real fighter, a real revolutionary, a real MAHA kid, and welcome.
Hi, Mr. Lyons. Thank you so much for having me on the MAHA Media Hub again. Hi, everyone. I'm Jax Bari. I'm 13 years old. I have celiac disease, and I'm the MAHA Kid. Last week, I was honored to attend the HHS Food Policy Celebration and watch history being made. Closing the grass loophole and defining ultra-processed foods are two of the biggest wins for label transparency in decades. Thank you, Secretary Kennedy, FDA Commissioner Diamantis, and Calley Means for reminding us that there is an F in FDA, and congrats to Dr. Heidi Overton on being nominated by President Trump to lead the FDA. The fight for transparent food labels is personal. Like 3.3 million Americans, I have celiac disease. Just one crumb of gluten can make me sick for days at a time, and it's like kryptonite to me. Food labeling isn't just about information, it's about safety. Gluten is found in wheat, barley, rye, and most oats. But since 2006, only wheat has been required to be labeled, but not barley, rye, and oats. That leaves a massive food safety gap in our food allergen labeling system. I'm pursuing 3 paths to close it. First, Secretary Kennedy can use his existing authority to issue rulemaking to close the gluten labeling loophole, and I filed a citizen petition with the FDA to do just that. Second, I'm working with Congress to change law with the bipartisan FASTER Act. Third, I've asked President Trump for an executive order to declare barley, rye, and oats as major food allergens. Last week, I met President Trump and I personally asked him to issue an executive order. We traded challenge coins and talked about my goal, eating without fear. I told him an EO would be life-changing, and this is a 90-10 common sense issue. An EO is the most time-certain path. It will overcome any FDA concerns about their authority, reduce chronic disease, and help with the midterms. 87 other countries around the world already require the disclosure of gluten-containing grains, including Canada, the UK, and across the European Union. Just like ultra-processed foods are poisoning Americans through the GRAS loophole, undeclared gluten is poisoning celiacs through the gluten labeling loophole. Since gluten-containing grains are not declared as major food allergens in the U.S., celiacs have been forced to rely on products that are voluntarily labeled gluten-free. Often, these are ultra-processed foods specifically developed for the premium-priced gluten-free market. I've also been working with Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. In July, Rep. Luna introduced H.R. 9988, the Bipartisan Food Allergy Safety, Treatment, Education, and Research Act, or for short, the FASTER Act of 2026. I'm incredibly grateful to Congresswoman Luna, who's gluten intolerant herself, and I'm proud to have inspired this legislation. The FASTER Act would require the labeling of barley, rye, and oats to be declared as major food allergens on packaged foods in the U.S. The FASTER Act has 12 co-sponsors, but we need more. Go to fasteract.org now to ask your member of Congress to co-sponsor this bill. But MAHA isn't only about fixing broken food policies. It's about asking a harder question. How did we get here? Anthony Fauci's first scientific publication was in 1965 when he was still in medical school, and it was about celiac disease. That should have been promising. But from 1984 to 2022, when Fauci led the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the rates of celiac disease and food allergies surged. Under his watch, celiac disease and food allergies were dangerously underrecognized and underfunded. NIH's own research, condition, and disease categorization system historically did not even separately categorize celiac disease until 2022. For every year from 2008 to 2020, celiac research spending was reported at $0. Think about the name, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. For too long, the A in NIAID was silent. That's why MAHA matters. We have to challenge assumptions, we have to follow evidence, and we have to demand transparency. We must fix regulations that have been corrupted by corporate capture for decades. I'm only 13. I don't run HHS. I don't run FDA, and I don't serve in Congress. But I know what it's like to stand in a grocery store and wonder whether something is safe for me to eat. I know what it's like to get violently sick by eating just a crumb of gluten. I also know that the government has failed 3.3 million Americans with celiac for far too long. Help us close the gluten labeling loophole. Help us pass the FASTER Act of 2026 and help make America a country where people with celiac disease can finally eat without fear. Please visit fasteract.org and email your congressperson. Let's make America healthy again. Thank you.
Thanks, Jax. That was really great. And I just want to say you're so amazing. You're a true MAHA warrior. You're an inspiration. And we need you to sort of galvanize, to get together millions and millions of people your age, of 13-year-olds all around the country, to just kind of stand up and say, we are mad as hell at this corruption. And we're grateful. We're grateful to the whole team, to President Trump, to Representative Luna, to Secretary Kennedy, and to this whole army that we have of influencers for getting the word out and for really beginning to change this company, this country after just a generation of corruption. So, I guess I would like to thank you for all the work you do, but also to say that I hope that you will serve this country at the government level at some point. But you're clearly serving all of us now, and you're serving really, really well. So thank you for just being such a fighter, and great to have you on again.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
So thank you all for joining yet another MAHA Media Hub. And, you've seen all the great work that's being done. You've seen all the people who are fighting, from Jax to Dr. Oz fighting corruption, from Calley Means working behind the scenes in all kinds of ways to get things done, from all the different people who are on this call, from, Dr. Berg talking to 45 million people each day, giving them ways to lead happier, healthier lives. So all of the people who come on, Russell Brand talking to his 35 million people, just an incredible group of people. And all of you have so much power, and you've seen the good work that's possible, and know the job isn't complete. And it's actually never going to be complete, because it's always going to be possible to be better. There are always going to be battles to be fought. There are always going to be viruses, physical ones, but also metaphorical viruses. And so we need to get together, to stick together, and to win these midterms so that Bobby Kennedy can spend the next 2 years of his life completing the job. So, that's so important. And I just want all of you to begin to think about that. There's about 3 months left, and it's just so critical, and it's so much at the heart of the mission we all have, of the MAHA mission. So thanks again for joining us, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 4 p.m.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
It is a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.